Hello, welcome to DTV. I'm Mark Harmon, long ago host of DTV, returning for this show. And if you're watching on cable access or on the YouTube channel, stay with us because we're going to have a fun show. We're going to be talking about sustainable living. We're going to be talking about permaculture and other topics important to our lives, our environment, just our good personal choices. I'm pleased that my guests today are David Bolt, who is the founder of the Sustainable Future Center and the East Tennessee Permaculture Research Institute. So if we slip into abbreviation like ETPRI, you know what we're talking about. Alongside him is Mark Carper. Mark, thank you for being here. Mark is part of the heart of that organization. He is a volunteer coordinator, and he's also with AmeriCorps, working in that operation. So gentlemen, thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to be here on DTV. You know, sometimes DTV gets heavily partisan, and sometimes we just deal with issues. And this is an issue that I think anyone, regardless of partisan affiliation or even political philosophy, should be able to get into.
I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah. So let's start talking about the Sustainable Future Center and the idea that sustainability should be an important both national and personal goal. How do you achieve that?
Wow, what a good question. It's something that I've been interested in for a very, very long time. Sustainability seems to be at the heart of some of the issues that we're having today in society, whether it's energy, whether it's social issues. Most of what I see is us not living within our means.
Right.
And that's what sustainability is all about. It's about looking at what we need to live and then making sure that that source of life is sustainable, is renewable.
So let me turn to Mark and say, you work with a bunch of volunteers. They probably share that goal, but how do they manifest it? What kind of projects do they engage in that are sustainable?
Yes, there are a collection of people that have dedicated and been dedicating their time to helping us with our activities. They come from a variety of areas. They learn about us in different ways. We have an affiliation with UT, so some of the students come here, they have internship requirements. Some are just people that have a strong interest in this kind of activity and want to learn from the process. So we have different ways of engaging those volunteers. Some are longer term, and those might be classified as internships, for example. Some are for discrete particular projects. So our projects include sort of program development, also site development, because we're growing a lot of stuff, and we're growing on basically a commercial property which needs a lot of rehabilitation and rejuvenation.
Let's explain the where element of this.
Okay.
You guys, by the way, I think behind us we can see the location of your facility, and it's in South Knoxville, is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and as I understand it, it is called the South Knoxville Karma Farm. Is that close to correct, or Sokno Karma Farm? Or
that's an aspect. So the site itself is Sustainable Future Center.
Okay.
Within that facility, there are different kinds of activities, including the East Tennessee Permaculture Research Institute, which more focuses on the application of permaculture principles, which get embedded and infused other activities. The Sono Karma Farm is about growing community sort of sense of well-being, like karma might indicate, and also produce. So that's what the Karma Farm aspect is.
So they do grow produce out there.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. Good. Well, good. I love the name of it, by the way.
Thank you.
One of my favorite bumper stickers is "My karma ran over your dogma."
Right.
And you probably can see that in your parking lot somewhere.
Yes.
Well, good. Now, for those who don't know, sustainable living has a whole bunch of elements. Okay. I mean, we could talk about everything from composting to solar homes, smaller homes. I mean, you guys are involved in anything that sort of reduces one's footprint on the environment. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. We have a lot of different demonstration sites there. So we have a tiny home there. We have solar, so we generate about 2 to 3 times more energy than we use. So that's again an example of living within your means. We have chickens, so we produce eggs there.
You have chickens?
We have chickens, 26 or so right now.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I went to your website, and we'll give the website here in a minute. Well, actually, I can just tell you right now, it's ETPRI.org. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I saw the chickens, and I saw a program, mealworms for your hedgehogs. That's about as precise as one can get, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, I mean, that's targeting an audience.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased, so people can go to that page and they can check out that stuff. But for those who aren't familiar with the term, David, let me turn to you. Define permaculture.
Permaculture was developed originally in the 70s, and originally it meant permanent agriculture. How do you take a specific piece of land and grow in that without depleting it infinitely? It has come to mean permanent culture. How do you create a culture that can thrive and continue to thrive in the same space without eventually doing their own thing and collapsing?
Okay. So I think we actually have a shot of your garden, so we could take a look at that for a second. Gardens, of course, are only a small part of permaculture, but they're an important part nonetheless. And tell us about your garden. I mean, how does your garden grow, David, and how does it go, Mark?
Well, this is a very interesting picture because this shows the first time I was actually successful gardening. I've been gardening off and on for 30 years and killing a lot of plants in the process. And this particular picture shows what's called a wicking bed.
Okay.
And so it takes care of the watering and the fertilizing, because I was watering this particular bed with the excess water from the aquaculture system, aquaponics system. So it's heavily nitrogen, heavily fertilized.
Oh yeah.
And again, it's the first time I actually produced enough to make it worthwhile.
Oh, okay. And have you worked in this garden as well, Mark?
Have I worked in this garden? Let me tell you. Yeah, so this particular image that we're looking at sort of embodies the use of systems so that maintenance procedure becomes simplified. And so in terms of system analysis, system design, what we have here, the wicking beds themselves, able to use kind of a waste product to then feed another part of the system, in this case the wicking beds that he mentioned.
Oh, wicking bed.
The wicking bed, that's a container that has water underneath it, the roots reach down to it, and so watering is simplified, evaporation is reduced because you don't have it entering at the top, it's entering to the plant at the bottom. We're using a waste product, so waste becomes food in this sense. The other thing that was shown was hugelkultur. So hugelkultur is hugelkultur. Hugel is a German term for mound. So basically, you take what could be waste wood, you then put a bit of soil on top, and you plant directly into it. The great thing about that is, as the wood decays, it acts as a great food source for the plant. It provides those nutrients, and also it's a great sponge. So in terms of water holding, that decaying wood holds that water, and the roots reach toward that water. It becomes stronger, firmly embedded in the soil, and you don't have to water as often.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, this area is known for having a good number of garden clubs. Let me give a shout out to my friends and neighbors in the North Hills Garden Club, for example. Have you had a chance yet? Do you go out and speak to these clubs? Do you share your techniques and talk with them?
I would be happy to do that. So far, that's not happened a lot. We've talked some to the Master Gardeners.
The Master Gardener class at University of Tennessee. Oh, very good. But those groups could contact you through the website and have you out as speakers to chat with their organization.
We'd love to do that.
Good. Now let's switch from the garden, if you will, to the Permaculture Center. Okay, that is more. That's not so much growing stuff directly in the ground. What are you doing there?
The Permaculture Center is basically a place to attract other people who are like-minded, and so the East Tennessee Permaculture Research Institute is just one entity that's there. We are partnering with other entities, whether it be the Boys and Girls Club, whether it be...
As a matter of fact, I think we have a photo of the Boys and Girls Club, and so you take groups like the Boys and Girls Club, and the Boys and Girls Club is, there they are, and they're having fun with chickens, raising chickens and feeding chickens, but obviously it's very hands-on, but it's also explaining permaculture, right? Is that?
It's explaining permaculture, but more importantly, it's experiencing it. And so the very first time the Boys and Girls Club came over, I was, I guess, surprised at the amount of apprehension the kids had around gardens, around bugs, and around nature. And now it's just totally different. I mean, there's been a huge transformation in the kids.
Okay.
They just,
So as my taking it, many of the kids in the Boys and Girls Clubs are sort of from urban environments, and they don't have this kind of rural experience with farm animals and growing gardens and all the rest.
correct.
Is that it? Okay. Have you worked directly with the kids, Mark?
Yeah, they come over about once a week, and so I think David is the primary person, and also a person from the community center brings him over.
Yeah.
So a little bit more David.
What was the
than
most
I.
fun question you ever had from a kid? Do you remember anything? Like, wait a minute.
it's not so much the question; it's the change in energy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the excitement. I mean, the first time when they first started coming over, they were very reserved and not sure what to do. And,
Right.
And now they come and they're just excited. And
Yeah.
Just seeing that change in energy's been.
So other than chickens, do they work with any other kind of animals?
A little bit with the fish, not so much with the fish.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just last night I was at a special event at the zoo. Do you have any relationship with the zoo and their exhibits and displays, and would you like it?
We don't have an existing relationship. Again, we're very open to anyone who's interested in sustainability, helping them move forward in it.
Okay, well, good. Let's, going from kids to adults, you have a group known as the Mad Mulchers. The Mad Mulchers. I think we even have a photo of the Mad Mulchers. They look fairly sane to me, but they do look serious and intent and perhaps a bit happy. What do the Mad Mulchers do, Mark?
So the Mad Mulchers, and this is not the entirety of all the madness that takes place on that site.
Okay.
So the Mad Mulchers was a series of work projects, primarily to sheet mulch the landscape that we're wishing to garden. We called this event the Mad Mulchers to bring people out. And what they actually did was lay down a series of newspapers, cardboard, wood chips, and leaves to suppress the growth of the Bermuda grass underneath and soften the soil. So it's a preparatory type of action for gardening in the future. So it's one of a series of kind of workshops that are taking place on site to prep us for growing.
Okay. So they're doing this work on site in your garden.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But presumably they're learning it to take it home to their gardens. Is that?
Oh yes. Yes.
That is the hope. Yes.
Okay. Well, good.
Well, a lot of people come specifically to learn skills.
Right.
So when they know that we're doing sheet mulching, they've not done sheet mulching themselves. They know about it or don't know about it, and they want to practice it.
Well, that brings us back, David, to some of the classes you guys run. I mean, sure, you got your Mad Mulchers and you got your Boys and Girls Club. What other groups are taking advantage, and what things do you teach them?
Basically anything that has to do with sustainability. So we've had classes on fermenting vegetables. We've had classes on making beer.
Fermenting vegetables?
Fermenting vegetables.
And then making beer?
Well,
Separately.
Separately.
Yeah.
Two separate classes.
Two separate things, but both involve fermentation.
Yes.
Okay, good. Anything else we should mention? I mean, I was looking at your website. I saw something on foraging. Is that right?
We've had foraging classes. Yes. We've
Wow.
got, one coming up on solar energy.
So foraging without eating a really bad mushroom or something.
Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. What was the one you have? Solar energy one coming up?
Solar energy one coming up
On the 24th, of this month.
And I suppose that these have become famous through TV shows, but mini homes.
Yes, tiny homes. We have a tiny home group, and we recently
You have a tiny home group. Are they tiny people, or is it just tiny homes?
Just a small group.
Okay.
Actually, it's a pretty big group. We've got over 200 people.
It's
in
growing.
it.
200 people in your tiny homes group?
Yeah.
Do some of them already live in them, or are many of them just exploring the possibility?
It's both. Probably, I know at least 10 people who are in the group who live in tiny houses.
Wow.
And the rest of them are exploring it.
Yeah, just if I may mention that we'll be offering a series of workshops on constructing tiny homes
Really?
on our property. Yeah, we have a young intern, and so she's very skilled and has thought a lot about these kinds of designs, and we'll be doing a build on site.
And they're not claustrophobic, and they look like normal human beings and all that.
These people?
Yes.
They do look like normal human beings. I can't attest to whether or not they're claustrophobic. I assume they're not.
Probably are not
Yeah,
if they're
probably
living
not.
in a tiny home.
Or they have windows that open.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, it's fantastic that you're doing these things.
If I may add, in terms of the types of courses we're offering, there was, as you mentioned at the beginning, this mealworms course.
Right.
So mealworms are a source of protein either for pets or even our own consumption.
Right.
So that's tomorrow, but we've had courses related to dietary choices.
Oh, okay.
So we had a series from Barbara Rose who talked about sort of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins.
Okay.
How to select those and such. So we look at a wide gambit of sustainability for us as creatures, as well as for the environment, because we're looking at ourselves
So I
as part of the
imagine,
environment.
and tell me if I'm wrong, that a more sustainable diet for a person would be probably fewer meats, more vegetables and grains, but I'm generalizing. You help me out. What is a more
It's more about where it comes from. So if you're harvesting a deer on your own property that was already there, that's a lot better than doing a farm raised, grain fed kind of beef.
Yeah, I guess there's a notion of food sovereignty, so you have better control over the source of your food.
I would like to follow up.
And going local, most, right?
Yeah,
that cuts down
that's certainly
transport
an aspect
costs and everything, going local with your foods when you can.
I would have liked to follow up on the mealworm thing.
Yeah.
So that was an individual who came to us who was expressing interest in mealworms. We had we didn't reach out to make that happen. That was just something that came to us.
Yeah. So people can bring ideas to you, and if they're good,
absolutely.
sustainable ideas, you'll work up a program.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's a very good thing to know.
Yeah.
And if people have such an interest, they can always reach you, ETPRI.org. That's the second time I've given a plug to your site.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Also, a plug for kombucha, because we do kombucha making workshops.
All right, now you're going to give me another term. What?
Kombucha.
Kombucha.
It's a fermented tea.
Oh.
So basically...
Well, you guys are into fermentation.
We are into fermentation. Yeah, we love those
fermented
particular
tea.
bacteria. Yep.
Okay. Now, was this an idea of your own, or was that brought to you?
No, it's by one of our volunteers. Who's been with us for a while, Annie Hollenbeck.
Oh, okay.
So she's a very skilled sort of homesteader and brings a lot of her skills to our site and teaches people.
Overall, how many volunteers or would you or attendees would you interact with in a typical month? What do you think?
It's changing.
Yeah, it's
It's growing very fast. I mean,
Yeah.
before Mark came, it was really hit and miss, and now he's got roughly 10 people that are there on a weekly basis, and then dozens more that are there.
Yeah, it depends if they're like an internship or volunteer regularly versus for a discrete project. So if we're doing a work project, we'll get more people in. We advertise on our website. We're also partners with Volunteer East Tennessee, so we've been able to get people directed to our site through them as well.
Very good. Now, let me just put it on a personal level for a second. What motivated you to get involved with sustainable living?
It's something I've been involved with all my life. I really started doing it full time in 2003. I had sold my interest in a software company.
Okay.
And I just was looking, from my perspective, it looked like society was heading for a cliff. It's like, what can we do differently?
An environmental cliff.
A cliff in all sorts of ways. I mean, in terms of resource depletion, in terms of social depletion with all the wars and stuff that were going on, all the violence, and it's like, what can we do differently? And so that began a personal search for sustainability.
That's great. And what about you, Mark?
Well, I guess in a large sense, fear of going over that cliff.
Yeah.
So I'd like to put the brakes on. And I think on a more personal level, there's a lot of reward, intrinsic reward I get from pursuing this. My impact is lessened. In the process, you engage with a lot of people who have the same heart, and there's a strong sense of community within that. And I think what's reflected in our volunteers is a lot of giving. And just being the volunteer state, it sort of embodies that. And we're one place that they can sort of express that need.
I'd like to follow up on that too. Is that when I first started this journey in 2003, it was a very depressing thing, and I think that's what he's talking about. I'm not there anymore. I'm much more
happier,
much more optimistic, and when you can actually go and do things on a daily basis and see that cliff receding, it's a very uplifting thing.
Now, sometimes, however, we read the news and we see public policy going in directions that don't seem to help sustainability, in fact, go the wrong way. I know your institute probably doesn't deal with public policy matters. Does it?
Not currently, no.
No.
I mean, that's one of the things. It's like you can fight the policies, or you can say, as an individual, say, what things can I do today to make this a better place to live?
And probably in our lives we can find time to do both.
Right.
All right. I don't know, I suppose you can't speak too much to public policy, Mark. AmeriCorps will say, oh, hold on. But, I mean, there is some reaction to current EPA policies that we can at least take note of. Let's also move on to this personal action thing, because there is sort of an anti-materialism movement, I'm going to call it. Sometimes they use the word affluenza to describe this sort of overconsumption, excess consumption society. There's a good documentary, by the way, called Affluenza, Escape from Affluenza. And I've even done, I think, 3 or 4 research papers on what are some of the correlations linked to affluenza. Then there's the group out of Vancouver called, I believe they're called Adbusters.
Okay.
And they've created something called National Buy Nothing Day. I
Yep.
don't know if you knew about this. Do you know about this, Mike?
Yeah, it's on Black Friday, basically.
Yeah, it's done on Black Friday. It doesn't get much attention in the news.
No, it doesn't.
They're always talking about all these doorbuster savings things, and then they go to commercial for doorbuster savings. But you know, I was just wondering, do you see your local institute connected to some of these national trends? And do you have any formal connections? Do you go to conferences? Do you belong to organizations that link your permaculture and sustainable work to others doing the same?
We're in the process of reaching out to others.
Right.
And I think like the Transition Town movement is a good example of people.
Transition Town movement?
Right.
Okay.
So that's an example of another group of people who are trying to do the same thing we are.
Right.
And I think they've done a good job. I mean, their language, their workshops and whatnot.
And they're a national movement now?
They're national,
They're international.
movement.
International movement.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Started out of the UK.
Right.
There's a lot of initiatives with the United States.
Okay.
And there's a process you go through. And the notion of transition towns themselves is to basically plan where you're going in terms of an energy descent. If you're looking at sort of the cost of fossil fuels, either economically or environmentally, and sort of detaching from that, a procedure.
So when
to
you're
deal with
doing
such.
the routine things of city and county government, you should plan sustainability, energy use into that.
Definitely.
Yeah, a lot of people are. So a lot of cities have already adopted that in terms of climate change,
Right.
but also their own personal budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in our area, the city of Knoxville's done, I think, a fairly good job in that regard. Knox County, I don't think so much. I mean, have either of you looked at the Recode Knoxville thing, where we look at the different ways we approach land use, and do you have an opinion on it yet?
I'm aware that's going on. I have
Yeah.
not looked at it in detail, so no, I don't have a.
Yeah, and it's something that I think there's sort of there's differences in zoning codes with certain things where you can build in incentives. I think environmental sustainability would be one of those incentive kind of arrangements.
I think what we're probably most acquainted with is the urban ag aspect.
Right, urban agriculture.
Yeah,
movement,
so they're re-looking at in terms of, having chickens, for example, on your residential property.
Right. Which you're allowed in the city of Knoxville.
You are allowed to have a certain number.
I believe it is three,
Six.
Six hens, yeah.
6 hens, no roosters.
No roosters.
Too much crowing.
Too much crying. Yeah.
Okay, but for the Knox County, we have a sprawl problem that we're kind of reluctant to admit to or take action against. That was one of the things when I served on county commission that we talked about but never got around to really fixing. It's the thing. I don't know, do you ever get into sprawl issues, Dave, when you're working with your workshops and your training classes?
Again, this is something we've dealt with, not directly. I mean, I suppose the tiny house movement is sort of indirectly.
In an indirect way,
Right,
yes.
yeah.
Would deal with that, yes. I think in the long run we're going to have to look at that, because we have a tax code that says, your property taxes automatically get reduced if it goes up with the rate of inflation. So in effect, your rates are flat. Your needs keep increasing, your rates, and so you keep looking to new properties, and that means tearing up green space and sprawl. So, all right, so a little bit of politics, but it's a political show, and you guys stayed within your realm and didn't venture into partisan matters, so I appreciate that, I suppose. But let's talk now on where we're going next. What are some of the things you anticipate doing in the future through your institute and through your permaculture work?
Well, the main thing we want to do is continue to keep building relationships within the community and developing community capabilities to be more sustainable.
Yes, well, good. And anything you're hoping to get started, Mark?
Well, I'm focused currently on the Sono Karma Farm and working with the interns that we have. The interns themselves, the program itself is not just about being delegated tasked,
Right.
but what they gain from the process.
Right.
So there should be a learning aspect for them.
And for you as well, it's very
Yeah,
interactive.
yeah, we're gaining a lot from them in terms of energy and ideals.
Right. And we should notice that people may have noticed our background change, so there's your website and how you can get involved if you are interested in these sustainability issues and permaculture work. And if you want to bring a topic to this group to organize a gathering, I mean, if they can talk about mealworms for your hedgehogs and foraging. Almost anything that goes to sustainability is something you guys will accept and run with.
Exactly. We have some very, very nice facilities there. We have a library, we have a conference room, we have meeting space. So, for example, the Next Step Initiative is meeting there. That's dealing with the opioid epidemic.
And presumably, you're a nonprofit and will gladly accept donations
Oh,
towards
very
that
much
causes.
so. We'll accept donations in the form of money and also donations in the form of labor. I mean, come out there and join the community and learn with each other.
Now, as I understand it, in some upcoming shows, we're going to return to this topic here on DTV. Solar power, tiny houses. Is that where you're going next with this? I think where we're headed next, aren't we?
Yeah, we'd like to bring in some of the other community partners who are working with us, and so they can kind of get their perspective of how they've changed and how they've benefited from the relationship with us.
That's great. And have you had any dealings, Mark, with these external groups that come to you guys?
Yeah, so there's the Boys and Girls Club with the Permaculture Guild, so there's a lot of members of that group. They've been engaging with us in terms of ideals and design. So those are the two that come to mind most immediately.
The Sertoma Club.
The Sertoma Club, or Center.
Very good. You know, as a person who teaches journalism, I sometimes throw in this question, and it usually works. What didn't I ask that I should have asked? Let's start.
I think the thing that I've not maybe done a good job of expressing is just the personal aspect of how much it changes your life. I mean, there was a time in my life when I was doing the traditional.
You were in a high-tech job.
You take a job. You're on this continual more campaign. Bigger house, more cars, more things. And at some point, I just said, I've had enough. I mean, at that time, I had 3 houses. I had boats, and I've just in the last 10 years have been going the other way, and more like the simplest.
Deliberately simplifying.
Deliberately simplifying. So now, my life's gotten a lot better, a lot more full, because now I have time to do other things.
That you really enjoy and can concentrate on.
Exactly.
And what about for you, Mark? What should have I asked about that I didn't?
I think for me, in terms of a question that might have been asked, was how people gain from this experience on our site. And I would attest that there's kind of a spiritual sense or emotional sense in terms of connecting with people, but also there's an intellectual component as we're thinking through system components and designs and redesign and reintroducing new components to a system.
Okay.
So there's that.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, so with the Sono Karma farm, for example, we're thinking about what will grow, of course, and we have our seeds, but like all gardens, you need to have good soil, and you need to have water accessing it.
Pollinating insects.
Pollinating insects. So as we lay out our plants and our beds, we think about what plants go where, but also how we capture water. So one of the principles of permaculture design is catch and store energy. So we're looking at catching water, which typically go to the creek, and bringing it to our garden and storing it within the soil. So looking at that element and designing for it and how it integrates with the rest of the system.
Well, I just want to thank you both. I mean, really, this has been a great conversation with David Bolt, the founder of the Sustainable Future Center and the East Tennessee Permaculture Research Institute, and with Mark Carper, who is a volunteer there, an associate, a member of AmeriCorps. We've had this, I think, very enlightening discussion about sustainable living, permaculture. And the good news is Democratic Television, DTV, will be returning to these issues very soon in future shows. We look forward to that. We think it's a good public service. And I want to thank you for doing this public service and reminding us that it's not just about how much you have, but how much you enrich your life by what you do with your time. Very well said. You guys have certainly made that point very well today. So my name is Mark Harmon. The program is Democratic Television. We'll be back again in a week with another new edition, and thank you for your time.